sort of the last 20 to 30 years that this sort of marketing analytics has been taken seriously. The one thing we've managed to teach clients is a bad thing. Like, you should be thinking about ROI.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Andrew Wilshire is an independent analytics consultant out of the UK and founder of Diametrical Limited, where he's advised a distinguished and expanding rap sheet of clients that include Denso Aegis and Bang & Olufsen. He's been a developer, a data analytics director. He's packing degrees in engineering, math, and music. And today he brings his full suite of skills to the NinjaCat podcast. Andrew, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Return on investment, ROI, for those of you playing along at home. It's the most popular metric in the world for serious people that love acronyms, and yet you've said, yes, you, Andrew, you said often that it's misleading and actually unhelpful. So dish here for us about ROI. Why do you hate it, and why does it deserve scorn?
Yeah, my comments tend to catch up with me, but I'm going to stand by this one. To be completely fair, any sort of one number solution, that you're going to use to say, oh, this is the state of my marketing campaign, or these are my channels, you're going to get into trouble. But ROI it's a really strange metric. Ratios, people don't work well with ratios in their head anyway. You can't take an ROI of 6 to the bank, because they'll look at you and say, well, what is that? We take dollars here, or we take pounds, or something like that. Because really the only metric that matters in business should be, oh, how much cash are you making? And really the metric that matters in your marketing is like, well, how much additional cash did you generate doing this? As well as that, if you take media, the sort of standard response curve model of media, where you have diminishing returns. You have return on the y-axis and you have spend on the x-axis, and it sort of gradually goes up until it's asymptotically flat. There's a kind of maximum amount of revenue that you can squeeze out of your market on that channel. That's generally accepted to be a decent model of a media channel. If you subtract the cost of doing that activity from that curve, you get another curve a little bit below, but usefully one that peaks. There is a point of maximum return, maximum money in minus the money out that you spent to get there. On the other hand, if you draw the curve of ROI, then that starts up at sort of close to infinity when you're spending almost nothing, and then only ever diminishes. It just slides right down like a chute. And what that means is that if you try and say, oh, well, we want the maximum ROI for our campaign, you're almost certainly going to start spending less, because the less you spend, almost certainly the higher the ROI on that spend is going to be. And so you will be retreating away, in most cases, from the point of maximum profit. And profit is the thing that you can take to the bank.
Ooh, wow. I'm just so happy about that. That's really amazing, because the best ROI is if you spend no money, right? It's free.
Well, yeah, almost no money. I guess,
no free lunch. There's no free lunch. Thermodynamically speaking, there is no free lunch.
If you stand outside a store, and offer to give somebody 10 cents if they buy your chocolate bar, you probably get a decent ROI on that, measured in that way, and make an ROI of 6 or something like that.
Right.
But it's not scalable. You run out of the ability to expand on that success, if you like. Well, and that tends to happen in most channels. Most channels where you have a very high ROI, you probably find it's not going to scale at that ROI.
So talk about I love this concept, and it's very eloquently explained right there. But you receive a lot of punchy feedback from people, because they're saying ROI is this thing and it works. And I think you're kind of essentially not saying it's not that it doesn't work, it's that it just fixes your reality. And so talk about some of the feedback that you get popularly from just pointing out that ROI is sort of a limiting thing and not a potentially expanding metric.
People like ROI because, uh, as I said at the start, any one number solution is wrong, but people really like one number solutions. So, not being the most mathematically minded people on God's earth, marketers don't necessarily want to get involved in complicated equations or projections or cash flow, anything like that. Just like, well, can you give me an ROI? One number. I can take that to my client director. He can take that to his boss. They can take that to the CEO, and everyone's happy. And that's on agency side and client side and so on. I think it's in sort of the last 20 to 30 years that this sort of marketing analytics has been taken seriously. The one thing we've managed to teach clients is a bad thing. Like, you should be thinking about ROI. Very few other lessons have necessarily sunk into the industry, but except, one that, some of us wish hadn't sunk in.
This leads perfectly to the next question. I mean, you have wonderful experience in analytics and data, and when I hear you rap, on social media, and when I read your stuff, it's very eloquent. You're trying to make this accessible for modern marketers, but there's a lot that us lay marketers, I will include myself in these people, we don't get it right because we don't get data right. We're not looking at data the way we need to, and we're leading our teams, kind of maybe astray. What do modern marketing teams get right about data, and what do they get wrong?
It's interesting you say you're a layperson. Almost everyone in marketing that you come across seems to be a layperson to some extent.
Well, maybe I'm out. I'm proudly about that.
Well, I mean, the Mark Ritson mini MBA in marketing, which I'm told is a very good course.
Yes.
But it's amazing the number of people in our industry at quite advanced levels that feel the need to take that course. And that's because, they've been effectively lay people without training all the way up to this point.
Right. Yeah,
true. They've kind of been busking to some extent.
Yes, correct.
To some extent, I'm busking in marketing as well. The bit that I sort of understand is the sort of data analytics side of it. And I've sort of developed my own domain knowledge into marketing so that, I like to think that I know what I'm talking about to an extent.
Right.
I think there's a lot about mindset in data and analytics and so on. Linking back, I think that ROI, or the focus on ROI, creates sort of wrong mindset, because you end up with an idea that your marketing is it's almost like a passive investment. It's like you take it to a bank and you say, I'll give you this, I'll get 3 times back, that's the end. That's fine, but it's not a passive investment. Your marketing is a tool for creating sustainable demand. You're literally trying to change the world that you're operating in by creating consumers, persuading consumers, creating products, and so on. When Peter Drucker said that the 2 functions of business are marketing and innovation, those are the 2 things that change the world that you're in. So companies like Apple did it, Sony did it. What do you suppose the ROI on the first Walkman campaign is? Or the first iPod or iPhone? You're forcing new categories into being. It's almost like a force of will. You're persuading people that this is something new. You really can't quantify the impact that they had just in terms of, what is the return? What was the investment as well? It doesn't make much sense. The modern world, in a sense, is an improvement. The attitudes to data have improved to not that long ago when, using data would have been complete anathema. There's nothing that the boffins can teach the creatives about, stuff, anything really. I think it's probably gone too far. A lot of senior people in advertising think it's gone too far. Lots of people like to use the expression data-driven. And I think that really putting the cart before the horse. You're saying that data drives the choices that you make. Are you just surrendering all of your own agency to the data? In which case, are you actually required? Can we just replace you with a macro in Excel or something like that? Data is a tool. It's not the boss. And putting data in its proper context, it's an essential part of actually being able to use it effectively. And so that means that domain knowledge of the sort of real world system in which you and your client are operating. So you understand that, what does this data actually mean? Where did it come from? How is it collected? What's wrong with it as well? There's a concept in control engineering called observability. And it's kind of the idea that in any process, there are points where you can get a really good measurement or knowledge of the state of the system at some point, and there are points in which it's hidden from you. And marketing is one of these domains where there's an awful lot hidden, and we kind of pretend it isn't, but it is. So what I mean by that is that you will never know why a person picked up a packet of whatever in the shop for definite. For certain they did pick it up. You don't necessarily know why. You probably don't even know why you yourself picked up half the stuff in your shopping basket, other than, oh yeah, that one. Okay, fine. And so you look at the data, which is, there's the problem with data in terms of marketing is that there's too much. It's collected automatically, it's processed unthinkingly and presented pointlessly. There's no one actually takes a step back and says, what is this telling us about the real world in which we are operating? Because any actions that you take off the back of this data have to go back and say, right, we're going to try and alter this real world that this data has given us a partial insight into. And that's the kind of mindset that I wish more people had, rather than, you get a CSV file of numbers, and then you have a set number of processes that you do regardless of the client, regardless of the sector or the category, and you get some juniors to turn it into a 200 slide PowerPoint presentation that every month you and the client have to sit through, close to tears, and you get to the end and say, right, same again next month, great. And what was learned, kind of nothing, but it's this pantomime of trying to show that you're using data effectively when you really aren't.
Oh my God! So and you're leading gracefully into this next question about reports and dashboards. So in a way, they've helped unlock new ways to measure effectiveness, but they've also created new ways to misinterpret analytics, like you're saying, and mindsets to accompany them. So your philosophy to approaching a report and a dashboard is what's your advice to people, because we have to hand over these dashboards and reports. What's your advice on getting clients to and agencies to inspire investment and get action on the table?
My attitude to most dashboards is that they're not required. And this is kind of related to the last point. It's like, what do you actually want these numbers for? And there's a tendency to sort of accelerate, go faster. We want more frequent updates. I mean, I do a lot of work in econometrics, and it used to be that, marketing mix modeling. It used to be that you would probably you'd build a model once a year, perhaps twice a year, and you would do a presentation and report, and that's fine. Now clients, are wanting updates often every month. They would have them more frequent than that if they could, and there's no the additional value of doing that is limited, and it's not without cost. It's not without cost of training people to do it, but it's also not without cost. And does it actually make more effective marketing in your organization? I tend to think that clients and agencies and whoever else is dealing with this most of the time should slow down rather than speed up. Most of the things that matter move on a much slower rate than daily, weekly, monthly. For example, if you have a problem with your brand, if it's declining, it almost certainly didn't start declining yesterday. And it's almost certainly not going to be fixed tomorrow or next week. You need to take that sort of longer term view as to why is the trend we're on the trend. Mm-hmm. So, for example, a company like Kellogg's, have been victims of a trend. I say victims, but
right.
The victims of a trend, towards healthier eating. In some, for many people, they don't want to give their kids sugary cereal.
Right.
Now that isn't something that's going to be changed by marketing. That's something that's going to be changed by products. So, Kellogg's have changed their lineup and now doing more healthy eating stuff. But your marketing has to come out and say, oh yeah, you tell people that the product has changed, and hopefully you sort of recover market share. Hopefully you recover profit and so on. Mm. There is nothing that you could have gathered on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, data-wise, that would have given you any insight into that other than looking at a trend over a year or 2 years or 5 years. Similarly, I think that, there's lots and lots of companies pay for monthly brand tracking. It's almost certainly pointless in most cases. If you're a very big brand, the variation in your brand awareness from month to month should be almost zero. This is kind of what relates to the observability point. If you could do a survey of every single person in the country and ask them every single month, then okay, you would get the perfect awareness of your brand measurement, but what you would find is it's almost certainly not changing very fast. If the survey that you have commissioned to ask a very small sample of people every month about your brand awareness, if that survey is changing significantly from period to period, then it is almost certainly a fault with the survey and not a true reflection of your signal. Quote bomb. It's kind of the same. Even if you're a small brand, the chances of getting any measurement at all that's representative on a random survey when you're a brand that's maybe bought by, a 1% of people in the country. Think about the size of a poll that you would actually have to run to get enough people to make that reliable. It doesn't make any sense. Do it once, do it annually, that sort of thing. See what happens. You don't need to up the frequency of that sort of measurement. The sort of cul-de-sac that modern media is getting itself into is that more money gets spent on platforms like Google and Facebook, which do offer this, it's kind of instant feedback. It's like the same dopamine hits that looking at your phone every 5 seconds gives you. It's like, we'll watch this metric. You are chasing noise most of the time. You probably wouldn't see a great difference in performance if you just left a campaign running for a month and went back to it. This is some of my own personal prejudices. Especially actually when you think of that the likes of Facebook will sort of daily optimize who they're showing it to, perhaps what the creative is that they show to different people. They're doing a job for you. That job also makes it actually very hard for you to work out what's going on because it's always changing. So it's not a proper test and control plan.
Well, what's so amazing is that you being a data, enthusiast and you want to dive into numbers and do a lot of work. It's interesting that you're talking yourself out of work, but speaking more towards effectiveness and less towards this efficient mindset. And I think maybe we've become so obsessed with being efficient that you're just not being effective. Do you have like an anecdote or like a story? Like, do you have a Cinderella story about marketing data analysis, like where you've given some advice to a client and they just took it to the ball? And equally, do you have like a horror story that you can share and you can, blurt out the details or?
So I mean, in terms of doing myself out of work, I think it's just important to note that there are diminishing returns on analytics too.
Good point. Point taken.
If you want to, I'm as big a fan of retainers and like monthly fees as anyone. But
we will put links to your page on the show notes.
Yeah, if anyone wants to give me $10,000 and that, for some, from advice, and I can almost guarantee that the first $10,000 you'll get the biggest bang for your buck than the 50th $10,000 in terms of sort of transformative output. Right. Anyway, sorry, back to your question. Story time.
Right. Yeah, story time.
I mean, you find that a lot of projects have very long feedback. So there are projects where over the medium term, it's like, yeah, you can double the ROI for that client, and it's normally through some sort of combination of channel optimization, portfolio optimization. I built some tools and so on to do that kind of thing. One that's slightly different that kind of sticks in my head is when I was working at Maxis as their global advanced analytics director. I got pulled into a pitch that was happening in Asia. I think it was Malaysia, for a well-known cosmetics firm. I think I'll probably sort of leave it there. And it was for a sort of shampoo brand or shampoo category. So it was that was the brand, and they were the incumbent, and it looked like they were going to lose it. That was kind of the feeling in the team. And so anyway, I got a call and asked if I could help out with some data analysis and sort of help out with their pitch proposition. And I spent it was quite intensive because it was like 2 days to do it. So I spent quite a late night really digging into quite simple things like category and category sales data across them and their competitors. And from that, you could see that the assumptions that both they and the client had made about which product was in growth and which product was in decline was actually wrong. The one that they thought was growing best because of their amazing marketing, actually one of the major competitors had just dropped out of the market, and their share had been distributed across a number of other brands, including this one. And that what they thought was growth from marketing actually wasn't. But then you could spot the products where there was actually potential for much more significant growth. And so they took this into the pitch, and apparently the marketing director was asking his team if they were aware of these factors. So you suddenly make the team that are pitching look more knowledgeable about the client's business than the client are themselves, and that's a terrific place to be. And and so they retained that account. I'm sure it's not entirely on the back of my efforts, but
pat on the back. It's just a light pat on the back.
Yeah, but being able to go in and actually understand something more fundamental, which is the actual market dynamics. This is where the client operates. This is where the client succeeds or fails, as opposed to just a list of ROIs that you've achieved for other clients in Facebook campaigns or in TV campaigns or anything. It's that sort of understanding of the wider environment and system that produces the most effective result. In terms of horror stories, I think probably my worst moment in recent years was I was asked to run a workshop for training sort of junior planners in the media world. It was part of like a course that a professional organisation in the UK runs. Um, and it was kind of spec to me as, you've got 2 hours. We want you to teach um, these junior planners about, I think they said econometrics at first, and 2 hours to do that is tedious and pointless, I would say. So I kind of said, well, why don't we do something on data in general? And they were okay with that. And really what I wanted to do was try and encourage them to think in a little bit of the way that I've been talking now. It's like, understand, what, understand the system in which you're operating. So, I kind of phrase it to them as like, when you go to work and you make a decision, what happens? Where are the ramifications of that decision felt? But by whom? What is the course of action that you're changing? If you're the butterfly flapping your wings, where exactly is the tornado going to hit? Because I wanted them to get the idea that data doesn't just fall from the ether. It's like footprints in the sand. It's the output of a measurement of something bigger that's happening outside. So when you get data, that idea of where did it come from, how is it measured, is it actually what we want to know? If I do something, if I decide to spend money on this channel rather than that channel, where will I see that difference? How quickly will I see it? How big a difference will it be? All that kind of stuff.
Love it.
And I completely underestimated the sort of gap in the way that they were used to thinking and the way that I was used to thinking. And there was an awful lot of blank looks. And at one point, I literally ran out of words to sort of further explain what I was asking them to do. And some people really enjoyed it, but quite a lot of people, I think, hated it beyond almost anything.
Well, and there you go. Maybe you were taking that immediate data and maybe you were reading it wrong. In the long run, I bet they love you.
Well, they never invited me to do it again.
Okay, so. Never mind. Okay. So I'm being optimistic here. That's what I bring to data sets. I say, oh, that looks good.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a failure on my part, but I kind of reflected on it and thought that because I didn't know what I sort of knew afterwards, I probably wouldn't have prepared much differently. If I was to do it again, then I would do it differently. But so if anyone wants me to do it again, then I'm prepared to take a punt. But I find that for people that only deal with data casually, there is no point getting into the sort of like, there's no point getting into hard maths about, people won't remember it, probably won't understand it. It's a bit pointless. That's not their world. The best thing you can do is try and give them an appreciation of how to think about it in context of their world, so that when stuff arrives, when data arrives that they have to deal with and try and make a decision about, then they have some competency in treating it with the level of skepticism that it deserves, perhaps, or actually just being able to think about it in terms of the decisions that they have to make.
I love it. It's a very it's a kind of a human touch to data. It's how can you use this in your life, in your community, and recognize data sets, because maybe we don't all appreciate the numbers. Well, so here's a question, and let's just get pithy. If you could just get really short, say you have a piece of wood or some stone, and you're going to etch your advice and put it in a time capsule. This is where you're going to put your advice about analytics and marketing. What's your kind of bumper sticker time capsule, one You said no one metric at the beginning. Here we go down here. One sentence, a couple sentences. What would you put on your gold record on the Voyager satellite of marketing?
The gold record went on Pioneer, didn't it? Anyway, the well, one could be know what you want to do, which might seem a little bit that might seem a little curiously unhelpful, but I think that a lot of people, they get into, they do their job, they get inducted into ways of doing their job in terms of data analytics, they probably engage with it grudgingly to some extent. But if you actually take time to say, this is the thing that I want to do, or this is the decision I have to make, you should always start with the decision that you have to make and then work backwards and say, how can data support me in what I'm trying to do? And, and if you don't have that data, then you should go and investigate. It's like, is there a way of actually obtaining the data that would be really helpful rather than just making do with what's lying around? Because, most companies collect lots of stuff by accident or just by habit or just routine. And very few actually set out to say, the one thing I really need to know is this. Can we measure that somewhere? Yeah. And if it was if I had a slightly longer bit of wood, I would probably say something like, look at your data and understand the system that produced it.
So how can people learn more about you and find you online, Andrew?
Well, you can normally find me on Twitter arguing with someone or other about something or other.
True story.
Yeah, I mean that's how we met, I'm sure. So the usual channels, LinkedIn, I suppose. You can email me at andrew@diametrical.co.uk. Always happy to chew the fat with people that want my 2 cents. And always happy to help out on projects if it's useful, of any size or scale.
Cheese or chocolate?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Cheese or chocolate?
Cheese.
Circle or square?
Circle.
Climb a mountain or snorkel a reef?
Ooh. I've never snorkeled, so I'm going to say climb a mountain for now.
Safer that way. You can wear a snorkel if you want. Strawberry or grape jelly?
Oh, that's jam, isn't it, in America?
Sorry.
I'm going to say strawberry.
Safe bet. Live with lions or swim with sharks?
I'm gonna go with live with lions. I mean, I'm gonna die one way or other. So
you'll be
might as well be dry.
I was going to say you'll be drier. All right, and finally, party with Mozart or barbecue with Beethoven?
Well, Mozart was a bit of a lad. I imagine that was quite fun. So let's stick with Mozart.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.